Russia, 1994. In the summer of 1994, lines stretched for miles outside exchange offices across Russia. Not lines for bread, not lines for fuel, lines of ordinary people, teachers, factory workers, pensioners, single mothers, waiting to hand over everything they had, their life savings, their apartments, their children's futures. They weren't being robbed at gunpoint. They came willingly because a man on television had promised them something that post-Soviet Russia had never offered before, a way out. His name was Sergei Mavrodi, and what he built wasn't just a scam, it was the largest financial fraud in Russian history. If you passed Sergei Mavrodi on the street, you would not look twice. He was short, quiet, wore thick glasses and cheap clothes. A former mathematics student from Moscow, he had worked as a night watchman. He sold pirated video cassettes out of the back of a car. He was, by every outward measure, nobody. But Mavrodi had two things most people don't: a profound understanding of human psychology and absolutely no conscience. To understand how MMM happened, you have to understand Russia in 1989. The Soviet Union was dissolving. The economy was in freefall. By 1992, annual inflation had reached over 2,500%. A lifetime of savings could become worthless in months. State institutions had failed. Banks were collapsing. The government couldn't be trusted. People were desperate and they were angry. Into this vacuum walked Mavrodi. In 1993, MMM transformed. Mavrodi launched a financial product so simple it was almost poetic in its brutality. You bought MMM tickets, paper vouchers, with his face printed on them. The price of those tickets increased every single week. Sometimes 20%, sometimes 75%. Promises of up to 1,000% annually circulated in the press. There was no underlying business, no investment portfolio, no real assets. The money from new investors paid the returns of earlier investors. A textbook Ponzi scheme. But what made MMM different, what made it catastrophically, historically different, was the advertising. The Russian government was watching. In July 1994, just over a year after the scheme launched, tax authorities raided MMM's offices. The announcement sent shockwaves through the investor base. People panicked. Hundreds of thousands rushed to sell their tickets simultaneously. The price, which had been rising every week, collapsed overnight. Mavrodi's response was extraordinary. He didn't flee, he didn't go silent. He went on television. In August 1994, with a criminal investigation building against him, Mavrodi ran for parliament. He won. As a member of the Russian State Duma, he had parliamentary immunity. He could not be arrested. He used that immunity to stall the investigation for months. He never once showed up to parliament. He cast no votes, introduced no legislation. He was there for one reason only: to stay out of prison. While Mavrodi was playing political games, his investors were living with the consequences. At least 10 million people lost money. Many lost everything. Pensioners who had invested their entire retirement savings. Young families who had sold apartments to buy tickets. People who had borrowed money to invest more. The psychological damage was severe. At least 50 people took their own lives following the collapse. 50 confirmed. The real number is almost certainly higher. Mavrodi spent nearly a decade as a fugitive. He hid in plain sight, in Moscow, in rented apartments, sometimes using disguises. Russian authorities launched searches repeatedly. For years, they found nothing. It wasn't until January 2003, almost 8 years after going into hiding, that Mavrodi was finally arrested. Police found him in a Moscow apartment, reportedly wearing a wig. In 2007, he was convicted, sentenced to 4.5 years. He was credited for time already served. He walked free almost immediately. Here is where this story stops being merely shocking and becomes something stranger. In January 2011, 3 years after his release from prison, Sergei Mavrodi launched MMM again. Not under a different name, not with a different face. MMM 2011. Same brand, same logo, same man. And this time, He didn't even pretend it wasn't a pyramid scheme. In public statements, Mavrodi openly admitted the structure. He acknowledged that returns would come from new participants. He told people directly that it was a pyramid, and people invested anyway. MMM 2011 spread to 18 countries, then more Africa, Asia, South America. In Nigeria alone, the scheme attracted extraordinary numbers before collapsing in 2016. In 2012, Mavrodi launched an MMM powered by Bitcoin. He understood something about human nature that regulators and governments consistently underestimated. People don't always need to be deceived. Sometimes, the promise of enough money is sufficient, even when you tell them the truth. On March 26, 2018, Sergei Mavrodi collapsed at a bus stop in Moscow. He was taken to hospital. He died of a heart attack later that day. He was 62 years old. He left behind no known fortune, no mansion, no offshore accounts that authorities could trace. Where the money went, the billions that flowed through MMM across 3 decades, remains largely unaccounted for. Some investigators believe he spent most of it maintaining the scheme itself. Others are less certain. The full picture. This has been The Cold File. If you believe every case deserves a second look, subscribe. We'll see you in the next file.